Hey folks, this is Kelani. We've been in patch 8.2 and season 3 of Battle for Azeroth for a while at this point. The first week of raiding went by and we didn't really see many changes to classes when it comes to balancing or tuning. The same thing happened when Mythic Week rolled around. Sure, maybe one or two things were tweaked the teeniest little bit, but I was expecting way more balance passes to happen to bring the lower performing classes up a notch and to level out the playing field at the higher end. Some classes have been dominating for pretty much the entirety of the Eternal Palace so far, and classes that have been out of control in the past are still excelling despite Blizzard's attempts to knock them down a peg or two. Well, it seems like they have finally gotten around to playing with some of the numbers, so we have some pretty large nerfs and buffs to a variety of classes to talk about, which should help the lower performers do a bit better in all forms of content, and one class specifically should finally get knocked down at least one more peg. It should be pretty obvious at this point that the class on the chopping block this week is the Rogues. Honestly, it's not surprising if you take a closer look at the high-end PvE ladders. In both Raids and Mythic Plus, Rogues are doing incredibly well. Now, don't worry your socks off too much if you're playing Rogue at the moment. You're still going to be fantastic in all sorts of content for all sorts of reasons, and this nerf is actually only to the Outlaw spec. So if you're happy blasting the DPS charts as Assassination in Raid, this isn't going to affect you in the slightest. But I guess the Rogue mania that has been swamping the Mythic Plus scene has gone a little too far. So here we are again with the Outlaw Rogue nerfs to see if anything is going to change this time around, because the last round of nerfs didn't really seem to do anything. They're still targeting Outlaw Rogue's AoE potential by nerfing Blade Flurry so you cleave nearby enemies for 30% of normal damage instead of 45%. That's a sizable nerf already and will affect all AoE damage coming from an Outlaw Rogue, but they're also poking at the same Azerite trait as they did before, keep your wits about you. It's now going to give you 3% extra chance for Sinister Strike to strike again per target hit with Blade Flurry, down from 5%. So all in all, Outlaw Rogue should be doing significantly less AoE damage when compared to what they have right now, even if you end up pulling half of a dungeon at once. In case you're wondering, all of the buffs and nerfs we're going to talk about in this video are currently scheduled for the next weekly reset, so Tuesday or Wednesday depending on what server you're playing on. Now the question that a lot of people are asking, especially the Rogues, does Rogue really need nerfing that badly? Well, a lot of people seem to think so. And honestly, you can't really blame them. If you look at the MDI this time around, or even just the top runners for live servers, you're going to find at least one rogue in practically every group. A lot of groups run with two rogues, especially for the MDI, and it's not uncommon at all for all DPS in a given group to be rogue, rogue, and rogue, when the vast majority of the groups are literally a prot warrior, a resto druid, and 3 rogues. You probably have a bit of a balancing problem on your hands. But I don't think Rogue's damage is really the main problem, although they can pull some insane numbers on both single target and AoE, and 2 of their specs are very strong right now. I still don't think damage is really the key issue. The dungeons in BfA have been designed so that a rogue's utility shines through more than anything else. Now obviously, if a rogue was down in the dumps bottom tier garbage DPS, maybe we'd see some of the classes in the spotlight, but honestly, they might still take a rogue just for their utility. It wouldn't be 3, but you know, one would still be there. Being able to skip over anything you want in a dungeon that doesn't usually allow for that is insane, especially when you keep your DPS cooldowns and potions. The discussion can go back and forth forever on this topic, but as long as the dungeon design stays the way it is right now, I think rogues will always have a place, almost regardless of their damage output. Well, that is for as long as they have Shroud of Concealment anyway. Take that away and you probably fix the problem, but you also gut a class of its fantasy at the same time, really, don't you? It also helps that rogues have an answer for almost any threat you can throw their way. Cloak, Crimson Vial, Vanish, Feint, they just have so many options. So rogues will see a damage loss in AoE and cleave situations for the Outlaw spec, but they're still probably going to dominate pretty comfortably in Mythic Plus dungeons going forward. If you were leveling or gearing a rogue and got a little worried about these nerfs, I wouldn't worry too much. My rogue is still getting geared up for sure. It's not all about the rogues though, and it's not all just about nerfs. A lot of classes will actually see some pretty decent buffs. Frost Death Knights, Unholy Death Knights, Destruction Warlocks and Arms Warriors will all have their abilities souped up by 5%. That's 5% across the board. By the sounds of things, it just says all abilities, so expect a good kick up in DPS after the next reset if you're playing one of those classes or specs. I can see why those specs in particular have been chosen. None of them have really been standing out across the board for the Eternal Palace raid, and when you have 10 rogues and a handful of other DPS signing up for your Mythic Plus keys, I doubt it really matters whether they're an Arms Warrior or a Frost Death Knight, but an extra little damage boost should help those lower performing classes get a bit of a leg up in the current patch. I am super interested to see how the spread of DPS rankings will look for the next few weeks. Can these buffs really shake up any of the stats that we currently have? Can the Destruction Warlocks push out the other casters even further on 2-target fights, or is 5% just too small a number to really make any significant dent? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I cannot help but think this isn't really a calculated effort to balance anything though. Just a straight 5% across the board for these classes tells me this is a quick fix and nothing more. Oh, these chaps over here aren't doing as much damage as a rogue or a demon hunter or a shadow priest? Alright, buff them up by 5% and let's see what that does. We'll come back to it later. Maybe we'll see more tuning in a few weeks, who knows, but for right now, that's all the buffs and nerfs for the DPS specs. We do have another round of buffs for one of our healers though. Restoration Shamans have been feeling the pinch, especially in the Eternal Palace raid. I know a lot of fights aren't all too stacked up, and very few healers can even begin to compete with the Glimmer Paladins, but Shamans were definitely the worst off so far. So they'll be gaining a 10% increase to Healing Surge and Healing Waves healing, and a 5% mana reduction on those two spells. There's also a 20% increase for Healing Rain, a 15% increase for Riptide's Heal Over Time component, and the Wellspring talent has been increased by 15% as well. All in all, these buffs are to try and shore up a Resto Shaman's single target potential to help them compete when everyone is spread out and running around like a headless chicken. It's a sad day when Chain Heal only hits 2 targets, or so I've been told by our resident Resto Shaman who decided to reroll very recently. I wonder if these buffs will make him reconsider. Now, in other news, we have some more information on how the Classic release is building up. First things first, the global test that started on Thursday, I believe, that was supposed to be a 1 or 2 day thing, that's actually been extended over the entire weekend and will end early on Monday for those of us on the West Coast. That means from the time this video goes up, you'll have just over 24 hours, give or take, to play on the very last Classic stress test. We're a little over 2 weeks away from actual launch, so they may decide to do one last shebang before we're unleashed onto the old version of Azeroth for real, but I think this was the last planned event. Either way, if you haven't been able to play just yet, or you've been on the fence about whether or not this is going to be something you're interested in, you have a day or so to get your teeth stuck into the Classic WoW before those test servers go down. It's not a lot of time, granted, but it's better than nothing at all. You can poke around with the classes and see how the UI used to be, how the talents worked, all that good stuff, check out the old models. I'm pretty sure anyone and everyone can access this test server, so no beta invite is required or anything like that. If you're interested, hop in for a bit to see how you like it. It might save you a bit of time towards the end of the month because you don't want to play for sure, or you might end up loving every second and find a new, old game to play for a bit. If you're a little lost, Blizzard has also set up a little primer dealio to get you up to speed if vanilla or classic WoW is an entirely new experience to you. I'll link that for you in the comments section below. Now, one major thing happening just after these servers go down is the name reservation for Classic. You'll be able to create your character and lock in your names on your chosen servers on August 12th. That's going to save you a lot of time on the 28th, so you can just hop straight in and start playing, but most importantly, you can pick your server before the release day. No squabbling with your mates over who picked what server first and where you should all re-roll your brand spanking new guild, or I guess there probably is going to be squabbles, but you can have them right now instead of cutting into your playtime later on. We have the names of the servers now too, so let's have a look-see. For North American realms, we'll be starting off with 4 normal realms, that's the PvE realm, 5 PvP realms, 1 RP realm, and 1 RP PvP realm. Their names are Atiesh, Mankrik, Myrazel, Pagel, Ferlina, Fairbanks, Herod, Thalnos, Whitemane, Bloodsail Buccaneers, and Grobulus. Some lovely names in there, and most of you probably know where they all come from. The Oceanic players will get 2 realms, 1 PvP and 1 normal. Their names are Aragal and Remulos. And across the pond we have the European realms split up into English, French, German and Russian speaking realms. The English players will have Golemag, Hydraxian Waterlords, Mirage Raceway, Pyrewood Village, Shazra and Zandalar Tribe. The French will have Orbadine and Sulfuran, the Germans get Everluck and Lucifron, and then Russians get Chromie and Flamegore. A good split of normal PvP, RP and RP PvP for the European realms as well. So if you fancy one of the names in particular, get that locked in with your mates so they can't argue on release day. Being able to choose your server ahead of time is so valuable, so have those talks right now. You won't want to waste any playtime when August 25th rolls around. I'm not too sure if many content creators or streamers have announced which servers they're going to be on. You might want to actively avoid or maybe try to play alongside some of your favourite names in the community. If you do, you need to pay attention to their Twitter feeds and upcoming videos. I think EU streamers are setting up on Golemag, not too sure, but I would still check to see if your favourite streamer or YouTuber has locked anything in for themselves. You might want to avoid some of the larger streamers and their servers because that will probably create longer queue times to play as all of their followers try to play on the same server. Or you might want to try and get in some of their shenanigans because remember, there's no cross-server play in Classic. If you're not on their actual server, you're never going to see or be able to play with them. Just something to consider. But that's it for this video. What do you think of the buffs and nerfs? Do you think rogues need to be brought down a few more pegs? Or is the problem more with how dungeons are being designed right now and how Mythic Plus works? Are you playing Classic when it releases later this month, or are you simply not interested? Leave all your thoughts in the comments section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to join these lovely guys and gals, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave. If you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.